Good afternoon, everyone. Michelle Casada here with WPTV. Thank you for joining us on your lunch hour. I'm here with attorney Daniel Lustig and partner at Pike and Lustig here in Palm Beach County. How are you, Daniel? Thank you for joining us.
Good. How are you? Thank you.
Good, doing well. Absolutely. And, just to kind of give everybody a brief synopsis of the topic that we're talking about today, you can see on your screen, it says condo ownership and what to know before you buy. And really, we're just looking at, what should condo owners be asking right now of their HOAs? What should they be looking into? If you are looking to purchase, what is some of the information that's available to you before you purchase? So I just want to kick us off first with Daniel. If you could just talk to us a little bit about what does it mean to live in a resident-owned condo building?
So when you live in a condo, you live under certain sort of rules and regulations. There's condo documents, there's guidelines. You know ahead of time when you are coming into a condominium that you are going to be dealing with an association. You're going to be dealing with rules. You're going to be expected to, pay assessments. So there are all these different rules that you have to agree to before you enter into a circumstance where you purchase a condo or where you actually decide to rent in a condo.
And for those of you who are joining in to watch, please go ahead and post your questions in the comments as well. We want to invite you to also ask your questions and join that discussion with us. Obviously, we're having this discussion following the tragedy out at Surfside. The Champlain Tower South condos collapsing, and there are a lot of questions about what was known, what wasn't known, what information was available to the residents, and what information the association had. And of course, there's an investigation going on right now on that. But we're also seeing that other condo associations are taking a look at their buildings, and many of them may be around that 40-year recertification that the Champlain Tower South was going through. North Miami Beach has a condo right now that was evacuated on Friday, 156 units, after their HOA had an engineer look at their building. And actually, the report that they were going off of was January 11th, a report that deemed the property unsafe. There's been another report since then saying that it is safe for occupancy. But we're going to be seeing this, Daniel, and I'm sure this is a big question that even you're getting from your clients. And, what to do in these situations? What kind of information should we be looking into if you already own a condo? And maybe that's what we'll kick it off. What kind of information should you look into? What documents are available to you as a condo owner?
So it really depends on whether or not you're going to buy a brand new, just built condo, because you're going to be dealing with a developer and with a developer contract. And then you have to deal with a lot of different issues within the contract that would require you to have a lawyer, because they are truly contracts that are made so that you as an owner have very little chance of going back to the courthouse and get redress. But for instance, if you're going to buy a condo in a building that is being there for a long time, I think that because of what happened in Miami, now people are going to start thinking about, okay, do I want to make certain conditions as it relates to my offer when I buy a condo? Do I want to have the owner get me all the documents concerning the inspections of the building from the association? Have the owner request a document so that I can review them with my lawyer? Do I want to have the inspector take a look around the parking garage areas and the pool deck and other areas that may have what would be terms as structural concrete concerns? There's going to be a lot of different things that we don't think about, or we did not think about prior to this tragedy, that are going to probably be some things that condo owners or condo purchasers should think about when considering purchasing a condo.
And so what you're saying, the common, routine for people who have been purchasing condos, at least for the majority, is you focus on your unit and what the HOA rules, the contract with the HOA, and nobody really looks at the overall building and the overall structure as a whole. But that may now change. People may now be using that as a condition of their signing a contract with a condo association.
And I think that would be it could be an onerous task for a homeowner or for a condo owner who's wanting to sell their unit, because now you are being asked to go and ask the association for documents so that you can disclose those to the purchaser. But I think it's only reasonable, especially when you have a building that has been around for 20, 30 years, that you want to know all the facts about that real estate that you're buying, that essentially sits up in the air. I mean, you're buying space in the air, hoping that it stays there for forever.
Yeah, and I want to bring up this comment that Andy Michael just posted. Too many condo buildings are rushed in construction, hence this tragedy. Hopefully policy changes are made. And we obviously don't know what issues exactly when this building was constructed, or if this was something over time that happened in this case. But what do you say to that, Daniel? Do you feel like people, there's going to be much more scrutiny in how these condo buildings are built from here on out as well?
Well, I mean, you have the building code, but a lot of these buildings were built before the current building code came into effect. So they go with the prior building code and design. There's a lot of design changes over time. There's a lot of changes in engineering. So yeah, there's a possibility that for new buildings you're going to see that, but there's also a possibility that for older buildings there may be requirements and inspections that certain things get taken care of regardless of of the cost to the condominium association.
Yeah.
And right now, um, we don't have we don't have a specific law that requires the cities or counties or state or the state to go back to structures built in the 1970s and do a comprehensive review to determine if it's structurally sound. But I think those things are going to change drastically. It all depends really on two governing bodies in the state. It depends on the building in the building department that regulates the constructions and the like, and it also depends on the state legislature, because that's how we get our laws passed. It goes to Tallahassee, and obviously this is going to be an issue of interest to a lot of people, especially because of where we live, where a lot of people live vertically.
Absolutely. And, I just want to just kind of brief everyone again. We're 8 minutes into the discussion now. Here at your lunch hour, we're talking about what you should know before buying a condo. Obviously, given the tragedy in Surfside, there are a lot of questions from condo owners. What should I be asking for? What documents should I be looking at if I own a condo building? Or if you are a prospective buyer, what do you need to know in this day and age for buying a condo? And I want to get to one of the comments that we had here. BDL Martica had a comment, and so did Richard Malian. A lot of people, older people, can't afford the special assessment. Martica says if you do not have a nice stash for assessments, you should pass. So these are also incurred costs over time. That besides just your unit and your HOA fee, you will have to put up more money for a condo. Daniel, if you could talk a little bit about that and what people should know about, if there are major repairs to a building, like we know would have been done at Champlain Tower South, where does that money come from? Because I know the HOA fees alone won't cover that.
So that's a great question, because it's reality. The reality is, if you choose to live in a building, then you're gonna have to also take that gamble. And when the condominium doesn't have enough money in its wallet to complete this type of construction, there may be something in the governing documents. Every condominium is different, but there may be something in the governing documents that allows the condominium to obtain a loan from the bank and finance the repairs over a period of time so that it can get done. And then the homeowners or the condo owners then would be assessed. There would be an assessment that would be done based on the loan that is obtained so that the construction and the repairs can get done. But, if at the end of the day, the board of the condominium, they have a what's called a fiduciary obligation, a fiduciary duty to the condominium owners. And if they know that these things have to get done, they're going to have to vote and they're going to have to make a tough decision. And it's going to be a decision that's not going to be popular, but it's going to be a decision nonetheless that's going to be for the well-being of the entire condominium and the entire structure so that they can get the repair done and the financing completed.
Absolutely. And, Paulette Wolf-Cock brings up a good point. She says condo associations need to be proactive and have thorough engineering reports done on a systematic basis. So, my question is, as a condo owner, I mean, you usually know when these HOA association meetings are happening and you're able to participate. But should there be something that you're asking for, Daniel, in your contract or something else that kind of puts the responsibility on the HOA to divulge information like this, as they do when they send out notices to your email about, change in trash pickup or repairs happening in the building, or fire alarm drills or things like that?
So, typically condominium associations, um, they are required, and not typically, I mean, they are required, that's what the law provides, to provide documents to condominium owners if they so requested documents. So, as an owner, you can take a proactive approach asking for documents. You can also go to meetings, and then when elections come, if you don't like whoever sits on your board because they're not giving you information, or you don't believe that they are giving you information consistent with the governing documents of the condominium, then you can talk to either you can run for the position yourself, or you can talk to a lawyer and see if there's a way to under the actual documents to enforce the declaration so that you are given more information. Now, I don't in terms of engineering reports and having that done. I think it's always a good idea to prevent. Unfortunately, a lot of this, people think, well, that's going to cost all this money, but you're paying all this money in insurance to insure the entire building. That's a line item on your on your dues to the condominium. So when you think about about that cost, and then you think about what would happen if something really happens to this building because we didn't do X or Y, is the insurance company going to cover us? And if the insurance company says no because you knew about this, if they can link whatever it is to the tragedy, then they may be they may be more likely to say, "Hey, we're not going to give you coverage. We're sorry, but now you have to deal with an open space of dirt and no coverage." So that's where the danger lies, and that's where you have to have a balance, and that's where people can rush into conclusions as to what happened and how it happened and what caused, for instance, the strategy. It's a great idea to have engineering reports, especially because there's a statute of limitations as to how long you have in order to sue the builder of a condominium or the builder of a structure. So you definitely want to know if there's a hidden danger that you didn't know about, so you can fix it.
Wow, and you bring up an excellent point too, because there is a difference, right, between the insurance you pay for your own unit and the insurance for the entire building. Daniel, in this case, if there is any reason why, insurance would say, well, you knew about the systematic issues, you knew about the structural problems, and didn't do anything about this. What about the individual condo owner? Will they still be eligible to get coverage from their insurance for losing their unit, even though this was a more, a larger picture problem with the building?
So, unfortunately, what we see a lot of time in court is that insurance companies are going to start pointing the fingers. So if there's multiple insurance carriers, they're gonna point the finger at each other, and they're gonna cite to whatever exclusions there may be in the policy so that they can avoid paying for coverage. So those are issues that have to come up. They have to be able to link the loss to the actual um, uh, collapse, or the actual structural issues to the collapse. So you know there's a lot of information that we don't know. There's a lot of information we don't have, and we have to make sure that um, we're very cautious as to what we do and what we say, because there's a lot of lives that have been terribly affected by this loss.
Absolutely. And someone brought up earlier too, I just wanted to make sure we didn't ignore their comment. They had asked about townhouses, and they the same as condos? And from what I understand, they can be run by an association the same way, but there's a difference. If you could talk about that, Daniel.
So it depends on where they're located. If they're located within a homeowner association, they'll be governed by a different chapter of the Florida statutes. If they're within a condominium association, then they're governed by the condominium statute. So there's a specific section of the Florida statutes that govern each one of them. Condos versus homeowner associations. They have very similar statutes. There's some differences along the way, but it really depends on where you are located. I think your best bet, if you want to know whether you're in a condominium or an HOA, is you go back to your governing documents. Your condominium association, your HOA may have a website with the bylaws, which may tell you where your townhouse falls within the whether it's an HOA or a condo association.
Is it also important? Somebody had brought up questions about the city, and city inspectors and building inspectors and all of that. Is it worth, if you are going to purchase a condo, to look into what the city building requirements are or the code is for condos, and look at, like, for instance, we learned through this whole tragedy that not every county has the 40-year recertification program, that's county by county. They decide whether they opt into it or not. So is that something important to look at too, Daniel? If you're buying a condo, not only the building itself, but the location. What city and county are you in, and what do they require?
Absolutely, I think that's very important, because every county may have different rules, different regulations as to how they approve things, as to how they look at things. Every city may have a different form of adherence to a building code or ordinances. So you definitely want to do that. I mean, look, you can always go back and look at the open permits and see what has been done in the building. You can compare, because that's a public record. You can go to your city or your county, and see if there's open permits or closed permits, and see if any of those permits relate to the structure. Somebody had made a comment about the association and their duty to the condominium to keep the premises, or the condominium, in a reasonable, safe condition. That's true. That's the association's responsibility. So the condo association has a responsibility to keep the condominium building in a reasonable, safe condition. What that means to an owner, to a visitor, is that no matter what the cost is, I mean, if it's a reasonable cost, obviously they're going to have to do certain things and repair certain things, because that they have that duty that they cannot just delegate to somebody else. Here, you have to think about, okay, if a building inspector comes in and says everything looks fine, do I want to get a second opinion? Yeah, that's you probably should have another opinion. Although the building inspector is going to be the one that is going to be looking at your building and saying whether or not you have to do something different. If you have an engineering opinion saying, hey, you need to get this done, you may want to go with that. I mean, it, it, it's such it's such a fact intensive situation when you look at this issues with the condominiums and the accidents that happen. But I think one of the most important takeaways of this is that you know you got to look at the documents. You got to look and see whether or not there all have been inspections. You have to ask for those if you're going to buy a condominium. You have to request the owner to give you that disclosure, because before, like you mentioned earlier, people would just look at the individual units but not the entire building.
And you bring up a good point too about asking for those inspection documents. Would you say in this day and age it's a red flag if the building hasn't undergone, an inspection in, 5, 10 years? I mean, what's a good time frame to look at? When was the building last inspected? If we're looking at a 40-year building like we, in this case in Surfside.
Well, it depends on what the requirements are, because if there's requirements for inspections to take place every 10 years, then you really can hold a lack of 5-year inspection against the condominium. But at the same time, you can always send your own inspector and ask the inspector to go and look around and take a look at different areas that would be common areas, to see if your own inspector finds something that would cause him or her pause as it relates to thinking that this is a good place for you to buy. And at the end of the day, if someone's going to buy a unit, they got to think about the whole entire package, not just a unit.
Absolutely. And I can imagine that can become pretty costly, right? If you're hiring an inspector. I mean, one thing is hiring an inspector for your unit and taking a look at all the elements in there, but also then looking at the building, as a whole.
It will be costly for sure, but you're about to, there's a distinction. If you're going to buy a condo, you're dealing with trusting everybody else that lives in that building. So versus if you buy a single family home, then you know what you're getting, because that's where it is, and the inspector's going to look at everything. So you have to look at, you have to weigh your options. But if you're going to make such an investment, I think that at some point people are going to start seeing that it makes sense to spend the extra few dollars to do that, to inspect the premises properly.
And something else I just want to bring up to everyone too, make sure you ask your questions, on this topic. What should you know before you buy? What should you know if you're already a condo owner? Any questions you might have along those lines, please feel free to ask them, and Daniel can get answers to you. But I want to go back to the purchasing of a condo, because that's a big topic right now, and a lot of people are weighing a lot of pros and cons here about buying a condo. Should you also be looking at the whether you're buying a coastal condo on on the water or something more inland? Like, is there a difference there on code that you should be looking for as well? Daniel, I know that a lot of people are really taking a second look at those condos on the water right now.
Well, it depends on where you are. I mean, it depends on the city. So the city's going to have a code. If it's a county, the county may have a code. But if you could be, on the, if you're on the coastline, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of other issues. You're dealing with salt water. You're dealing with that those winds that bring salt and sand, and all those are combinations that affect the concrete on the structures and buildings. So yeah, you have to look at those issues. And then if you're out west, you know I mean, at the end of the day, you're in Florida, so everything's sort of a marshland, everything's sort of a wetland in a way. If you're out west, and if you're too far out west, then you may be closer to the Everglades, and then you may have another set of different concerns that you would if you're in the beach. So, I think that my suggestion would be, if you're going to buy a condominium in the beach, you should have two. You should definitely talk to a lawyer that handles real estate transactions, and you should definitely hire a building inspector that will not only look at the building, but will make sure that they give you a frank opinion as to whether or not they see issues that are going to need repair or replacement, so that if you're going to buy the unit, whether or not you're going to be stuck paying that big assessment when that repair is done in a few years from now.
And that could be, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, we saw in this case, it could have been a huge chunk.
Yes.
I want to get back to new versus old buildings because there's a lot of questions we've heard from people in the coming days of what should you be looking for if this is a new condo building, just built. Like, are there any? Obviously, it wouldn't have an inspection report of 10 years, the problems 10 years down the road. So, what should you be looking for? What kind of documents should you be looking